Hi, welcome to Repairing Lawnmowers for Profit. In this video I'm just about to go out in the Mower mobile and pick up a Tecumseh Petrol Lawnmower that I've won on Facebook Marketplace for just £15. The chap that was selling this wanted £30 because it had some strimmers with it which I didn't want, so I just quickly offered him £15 cash for the lawnmower. As I say, it's a Tecumseh engined lawnmower, and the reason I specifically want this is because I've just written a massive article at the website Repair Lawnmowers for Profit on how to service these up, including all the little tips and tricks you might need to know, including sometimes as well, and this is a big deal, this, why the carburetor won't prime and the lawnmower won't run. So I'm going to get straight on with this. I'm going to go pick this lawnmower up. I'll be back in about 15 minutes and we'll bring it back and we'll do some servicing on this Tecumseh lawnmower. If this is your first time on Repairing Lawnmowers for Profit YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe and tick the bell notification. That way I can keep you up to date on everything that's going on YouTube. You won't miss a single video and it's completely free. So this is the actual conversation we had on Facebook Marketplace about picking the lawnmower. You can see exactly what I've typed. You've got to be a bit quick and you've got to be a little bit cheeky, but at the end of the day I didn't want the strimmers, so it's not a problem if you didn't want to sell it for that. It's not a brilliant lawnmower, as I've said. I just want the Tecumseh so I can show people a few little tips and tricks on it. But this is what I do when I get the cars ready to go. I've actually got a couple of new cars just really. I've got this one here. I've swapped this one. I had a red and a blue one before, but we've kind of updated them a little bit. But what I want to show is I always just put a thicker mat down here just in case anything leaks through, and it looks okay, this lawnmower, it looks fairly tidy. And I just put another one on top just because when you drop the grass box in here you can get in a bit of a mess. It's just a shame if you're just messing your car up. Some people are bothered, some aren't. But I also keep this strapped in here as well, and what these are just two adjustable spanners, because I used to go out to lawnmowers years ago where they'd replaced the actual handles on the side and you couldn't undo them with your fingers, so they're actually bolted on. If you have two adjustable spanners like I've got here, you can guarantee that you can get the handles down on any lawnmower and you won't have a problem getting it folded down in the back of a car. This is just a Ford Focus. I can usually get 2 or 3 in here comfortably. I'll just get this back here, I'll just pop it back in down the side of there. It's really handy to have that as well. I also keep a spare coat under there where the tyre is as well, but that's not really something you need to know, but I've always done that just in case you break down. So I'm going to clamp that back in there. I'm going to go and pick this lawnmower up. Just a really quick update as well. I've sold all the lawnmowers there. I think I've sold 6 or 7 now. I've only got my own, so I'm really quite short on lawnmowers. So I'm currently looking on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Gumtree. I've put an advert out on Facebook. I'm looking in shop windows and I'm sure that I'll find some better ones soon. So, as if by magic, I now have this Performance Power Tecumseh lawnmower, which is obviously not the best lawnmower I've ever bought, but it does help me. Just write this article, just reminds me of exactly how to do these procedures so I can help someone out. The problem with these lawnmowers, if you haven't seen any of my other videos, is just unbolting this carburetor. It's not the easiest thing to get to. There's like a bolt here. There's one right round the other side that you could probably get to if you really tried hard, but you've got to get round the back of here. What I like to do with these is take the recoil off the air filter box, take the exhaust guard off, the exhaust off, and unbolt everything and take this carburetor off properly. But for now, it's getting cold now tonight, so I'm just going to try and start this up. But what I am a little bit annoyed about is this recoil's completely broken. The guy who sold me it said he works at a race course, so he obviously maybe just gets given these or whatever, but this recoil is broken, so it's kind of bodged it up a bit, which looks a bit of a mess. So let's have a look in here. We'll just quickly fire this up. There's absolutely nothing in there, so he's drained that out. That's good news for me on the travel home anyway. It says it's smelling my car out. So let's just drop a bit of fuel in here. Let's just see if this will actually start. So it's completely empty, so I'm going to have to put a little drop of fuel in here. I've got these silly gloves on. I'm just to be honest with you, I'm just sick of my hands smelling of petrol when I've done this, so for the sake of putting them on for 30 seconds it just makes a bit of a difference to me. Let's tip a bit of this in here. A good chunk of fuel in there. Make sure there's enough in. If you're trying to start a lawnmower for the first time, you've not done it, you don't know if it runs or anything like this one. I don't think it's been running for a long time. Then make sure that you put a good amount of fuel in this. And these lawnmowers have a primer on, which you can never really tell if they're doing anything on the side. So I'll prime it a few times, but you can't hear anything when you prime it, like on a Briggs. So you've got no indication really without taking it off or looking from the back if there's any fuel going through here. I've checked the blades on right, and I've checked there's nothing underneath. So let's try it. Oh, that didn't feel so good. So I'm not sure why that's died there. I didn't actually cut that off, so I'm not exactly sure why that's died. I don't think it's going to run out of fuel with all that I put in. So we've got a bit of work to do, and I'm not really sure what happened there. Let's just try and fire this up again and see if it keeps running. Very strange. This often happens when you get one that overheats. So we'll have to see about that. That could also be a problem with the kill switch as well. If something's just moving into the wrong place and cutting this out. That only ran for a few minutes and then stopped. There's plenty of fuel left in that tank. It could just be a blockage in the carburettor, of course. Yeah, and this recoil really isn't doing a real lot till I pull it right out. It's hardly grabbing till there. So it's going to be difficult to start. It's obviously just been fudged to sell this, which isn't, you know, it's sold for spares or repair, so that's fair enough. So it was kind of a one-time deal getting that lawnmower running. It's going to want some work to stop it cutting out. We're going to probably need to service this carburettor, see if we can do anything with this pull cord as well, and just take this mechanism off and see if we can find a spares or repair lawnmower with a decent recoil on it and replace it. Bit of a strange one, Max. You normally get these lawnmowers that run for a while and then cut out. If all these cooling fins, you see these cooling fins in here, if all this is just bodged up with grass and everything. Actually, if you look at that plug, I don't know what this plug will be. I don't know if the plug's just, let's try and get that off there. What have we got going on here? Oh yeah, this has got a spring on. Some sort of spring over the plug. That's a different type of connector than I've seen in a long time, but it's on right. Yeah, the plug isn't in particularly tight either, so we'll have to have a look at that. So a few things to look at, but I know it starts and runs. That's the main problem when you get a lawnmower, is getting it running. Once you know it runs, you've got half a chance of sorting this out. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to service this up. I'm going to show you how to get the carburettor off. There may be easier ways, as I've said, just to sneak around the back and get this carb off. I'm going to show you how to strip this down, take the carburettor off and service it. Just for reference, this is a Tecumseh 35. We'll just take a look at this service ticket as well on here. See if we can read exactly what it says. It's just tells you the oil, tells you Tecumseh, regular unleaded, SAE 30 oil it says. Not much other information on there, apart from this is a Tecumseh. I suspect it's a 3.5 or a 4 horsepower model, they usually are. So, might not be too expensive. As I say, it's only cost me £15. If the only thing I need to buy is a recoil, it's going to be £30. Now, I've got to be very careful not to spend too much on this, because the problem with this is it's got a plastic deck, which I really don't like. I won't point that out when I sell it. I'll just sell it as nice and light, you know, lightweight. But it's not going to be worth an awful lot of money with a plastic deck and no self-drive. So if I was to buy the recoil cover, I'd be spending nearly £30, and I'd probably be lucky if I got 60 or 70 for this, if that at the minute. So I've got to be careful what I spend. I'm going to have a think about this. But for now, I'm just going to go and look online and see if anyone's got a Tecumseh recoil. So it's dark outside now. I've decided to bring this lawnmower in the garage. What I want to do is remove this recoil cover. I've just looked on eBay for one of these, a second-hand one, and I can actually get one with this decal still on it and everything, and it's £12, so I'm probably going to have to do that. I want to get this recoil cover off here, and I've just started undoing that. What I've had to do with that is I've just had to hold it down with a 14mm spanner and undo this top one, kind of with a 13. I've eventually managed to get that off. So this is all screwed into here. I'm not exactly too sure what's happening, but just recently I've just purchased this Ryobi 1X. I think it's a 1X, a 1 Plus. This is like an electric impact tool. I've never had one of these before, to be honest with you. So, but I've seen a lot of videos. A lot of people, it's got like a quick release thing on here. And it's what I liked about this one is I want to use it for undoing all these little bolts and screws and getting in, and I don't have to like plug this in all the time. My other impact driver that I've got is fantastic, which is a Clark one. I've done a review on this Clark one I've used for taking the blades off, and I'll put that in the top right hand corner of the screen now as a card. But this one is just a battery one. But the reason I wanted this one is because it's actually got variable speed on. Can you see that? So you can actually undo things or tighten things up at variable speed. This saves you stripping things off. I don't think it's quite got the power of the electric one that plugs in. I think it's 250 Nm. This was on offer in B&Q, which was £80, and the one I looked at in Screwfix and Tool Station was only 100 Nm and 90 Nm, and it didn't have adjustable speed on it as well. So I'm going to use this tonight and give this a go. So I kind of wanted to get a mower just to have a little play around with this, if I'm honest with you, because I've seen a lot of videos with people just using these just to undo things, such as these little parts here where someone screwed this in. It's just going to make my life a little bit easier just to get in and do things. Obviously I don't really need to use it on here, but I'm just going to get used to using it. We're going to get this recoil cover off, and I'm going to have a look underneath it. I'm sure I can't fix it, and I don't like this big hole in it. I just want to know exactly what's going on. I'll take that one out, that's the last of those out. It's just a lot quicker than doing everything by hand. Right, let's have a look at this then. So just looking at this recoil, I can't really see now I've taken this off. Too many problems with this. It's actually got two silver, like what I like to call lugs, that stick out when you pull the cord. They weren't actually sticking out very well when I first took this off, but it does seem to pull it round. If I drop this on here, everything seems to connect up kind of now and again. Like I'm pulling it now, it doesn't always connect. So I'm not sure if it just doesn't get a good connection with the inside of this starter cup. It may be that these are just worn off a little bit, but someone's obviously been in here, and it's not something I do. I don't like to take these off. I don't like to mess with the springs. I just don't think it's worth my time. And so I certainly don't want to be injuring myself, hitting myself with a spring, not for the sake of £12. But the recoil itself seems to pull over okay. I can't find much wrong with it. So I can only imagine it's a problem with the internal part of this, which is why he's had to bolt all this together. So let's just undo this a little bit, and let's just see what happens with this undone. So I don't like taking these apart too much, but yeah, obviously this part's not the correct part. Problem is, I don't think I've got another one of these to compare it against. I was hoping I might have one in the garage. I used to keep quite a few recoils. I've not got any more, but yeah, what you notice if you pull this over is these little lugs that just don't stick out anymore. Unless it's really tight on the top. Let's try tightening that back up again. Unless that's really tight on the top and tightened down correctly. Let's just see what it pulls over. It's really struggling, is that. So I'm not going to worry about this too much for now. I'm going to turn this lawnmower around so I can get to this exhaust side, and I'm going to show you how to take everything off this. And these are a pain to get to the car properly. I'm going to take this recoil cover off, which includes taking the petrol tank off and this exhaust guard, and get to two really awkward bolts which are underneath here. And all that is just to access the carburetor on the other side so we can service this up. So I'm not going to worry about that too much, but I've not given up all hope on the starter recoil yet. So let's turn this mower around and let's take a look at the other side of it. So I'm beginning to find all sorts of things I don't like on this lawnmower. I'm not sure that's the correct fuel hose for a start. That looks really quite wide to me. But to get all this apart, what I'm going to have to do is take this air filter off here. This actually screws on here. There's one here and one there on the back. So as a start, I'm going to have to take the whole air filter box off. And the only way to do this properly, to get in and clean everything as well if it's really bad, is to take everything off and take the recoil off and just have a proper look round. And that's what I like to do. I like to be able to get in, I like to be able to get to these linkages without having to try and undo all this. I mean, how can you put these linkages on properly with this air filter box and this recoil cover in the way? So I'm going to get a Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to start by undoing this air filter box. Some of these Tecumseh engines just have a separate air filter, which is much better, that just bolts on the back of this carburetor. It's like like a circular little filter that goes on the back. This has got this whole great big box on. So I'll just take that cover off and I'll take this filter out, and I'm just going to undo these parts here. I'll undo this screw. You see that? I don't want to round that off, so what I'm going to do is get an impact driver on that, and I'm going to undo it with that. When I say an impact driver, I don't mean the new one, I mean one of these good old-fashioned heavy old ones, so I don't want to round anything off. If I round that off, I'll never get that off, so I'm just going to spray that up, try and spray something down the back of the other one. No doubt the other one will be worse to get off. These are the worst things for taking apart. I don't always avoid the Tecumseh ones because they really do run well once you get them running. The problem is having to fiddle around to service the carburetor and get it off. But what I normally do when I'm going to start rounding something off like that, I hate rounding things off, is I get this really heavy impact driver and I just put this normal end in it here, this crosshead end in it, and just with the extra weight in there, I can usually just get things undone. And that's very tight. So I've had a few goes at getting that off and I don't want to round it off, so I'm going to do what I should have probably done in the first place. I'm going to get a socket. Hopefully I can get that on there just about. I can hopefully just get that undone. If not, I'll have to get an extender on. That's it. It's amazing if you can just get a socket on, what a difference that makes. You probably think, oh yeah, he's just stopped filming and undone that. Well, I haven't. I honestly haven't. And that would normally come open with that actual impact driver. That's a really good tip, by the way, if you're trying to get a guard off underneath for the blade, like the blade belt guard. If you can't get the little screws out, get one of these and just use the extra weight behind it, and it brings them little rusted screws off underneath. So not the best demonstration here, but something you can definitely look out for doing. Now that's come off perfectly. I haven't rounded it off or anything. I'll be able to put that back in using this Phillips screwdriver. So that's undone. So I say you don't have to put this massive air filter box back on either. You can just buy one that just pushes over the back of the carburetor. So hopefully that's going to come off. We'll get out of the way. That was a stroke of luck. I'm glad it was the near one that was stuck and not the far one. The screws dropped down into the cutting deck there. So I'm going to get this little pickup tool here. I'm just going to grab that out of there. I've used that many times. In fact, I bought that. I bought a few of these, but my kids normally snap them, so I bought a little bit of a better one. But I remember years ago when I first started doing this, I'm not even sure if I was filming at the time, my little lad had got the actual blade bolt in his hand and he dropped it down into the sump and I managed to get it out with one of those. But anyway, that's enough story time. That's the actual air filter off and out of the way. What I'm going to show you now is what I refer to as a killer tip. So take note of this one. This is a really good one. So if you've got a carburetor, a Tecumseh carburetor that won't prime, you see this hole here? Keep your eye on this hole here. When I'm pressing this primer bulb, absolutely nothing happens. Now if I go back and get this screw from in here and actually put this screw back in here like this, what you'll see now might just get you out of a little hole if you're not finding you've got a Tecumseh that will prime. If you put that screw back in there and then you look at the hole, ready? It's only a small amount. You can see it though, that's priming. Without that screw in, this carburetor won't prime. They just don't work without the screw in. It's actually designed to be in to make this actual carburetor prime. So if you've taken it off and you've serviced it and you're wondering why you've got a Tecumseh lawnmower or any carburetor for Tecumseh that won't prime, it's probably because you haven't got this bolt back in the back. So make sure that's in, because if it isn't, it definitely won't prime. Now, this looks like a really thick fuel hose, but what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take this recoil off here. I'm going to unbolt this here. I'm going to unbolt two on the front, and I think there's probably one more on the back. I've also got to lift this petrol tank off. This just lifts off here on this slot, actually just pulls out of this slot here. And then to get that off, I've got to take this exhaust guard off, and there's two really awkward bolts under here. There's one there and there's one that's just up there. Can you just see that one? You know, talk about making it awkward. So I'm going to get this recoil cover off. Just a quick reminder as well, I always do this out of habit, just make sure you've removed this spark plug lead as well. Do this for every repair, just so no nasty accidents can happen. I must say that on the video because I still see people doing this that don't remove it. It only takes a second to remove it. So let me just start by undoing a couple of these parts on this recoil. These are easy enough to do by hand. Could do some sockets that fit that little impact. I've just been playing around for a few minutes, just seeing what fits and what doesn't. There's actually a whole bolt missing here at the front where the exhaust guard goes on. So this has had a real good play around with it. Someone's had a real good mess around in here, and you know, this machine's actually been played about with before, which is always going to be fun. So I've taken these parts out here and at the front. I haven't done around the side yet, but I just want to show you this petrol tank. This actually just lifts off. You see there? Just slides off. I can get to these parts on the back. Let's have a look around there. That looks like a 10mm. So I'll grab a 10mm socket and we'll try and take that one off there. It's all good fun, isn't it? I don't mind doing this, it's quite good. You know, it's just not the best lawnmower, but I like showing these videos. I like filming all this. It's helpful to a lot of people and I get a lot of good comments, you know. Not all the time good, but most of the time good. You can't win them all, can you? So I do my best, and a lot of people will have a Tecumseh engine on the lawnmower. These have been quite popular. Apart from the fiddly side of undoing everything on these lawnmowers, I actually really quite like them because I always think that they run well. When you actually get them running, I always think they run really well and quite even. In fact, I was quite surprised outside when this one didn't run for very long and then stopped. But there's all sorts going on with this. As I said, it's been tampered with a lot. So it's almost designed like not to be played with, you know. Everything you try and do really doesn't want to come off. Like now, I bet I can hardly get that off. It still comes off. That does come off, that's great. Because the last one I had of these was actually bolted through this exhaust guard as well. In fact, it probably was where that bolt was missing at the front. Now, the next part I've got to get off is this exhaust guard. When I can get this exhaust guard off, I can get this exhaust off itself. And then I can get to the bolts. One here and one at the back, and actually take off this carburettor. Everything seems to be a different size as well. Nothing's got the same size bolt through it either, so just take that one off. I really should get some smaller sockets that are going to fit that impact drill, and I can use this for all these types of little jobs. That's what I bought it for, so I'm not spending ages on doing these little parts by hand as I'm doing now. So I'll have a look and see what we can find for that. I probably just need to get a smaller fitting so all my existing sockets fit on. So that's out of the way. Sometimes these exhausts have a little tab on that needs bending back to get to these bolts here, and this one doesn't have it on, but I'm not sure it's because someone's already taken it off and had to play with it already. They normally have one on. If it does, just bend it out of the way, get your socket on, and you just undo these two bolts and you can remove this exhaust. To use this, and all I'm going to do is use this to just unbolt these bolts off this exhaust here. You can see just how much time that saves if I can get every fitting to do that all the way around this lawnmower. I can certainly have these stripped down in no time at all. If you've got to this video through the article on the website, this actual video is part of the article on the website. I just want to show these two parts here for anyone who's come to it through the article, because these are the two parts you can't normally get to with this exhaust guard in the way. You normally got to fiddle around through this exhaust guard, through all these little gaps to get it off. It depends how it's bolted together, but sometimes you need to just put a socket on through the guard. For example, put this actual socket on through the guard on its own, and then push this part through the guard onto the socket, because a lot of the times you can't get through the actual guard with the socket in place. But luckily we've taken it off on this one, and I can get to these two parts here and I can just undo them. Now this is an occasion where this impact drive will come in really handy, because I couldn't actually get these undone, and what I've done is just put this impact in here, and they're both loosened off really nicely. I can actually get in and take these two parts off. I couldn't do that with a normal screwdriver, and if you look there, there's actually not much of a gap. There's not enough there to get your socket round and actually access that, so you've kind of really got to get a spanner on from one side and this side as well, which you haven't got a lot of room to access, or you've got to get it off using this crosshead. So having one of these tools is really handy. So we'll just back it out the rest of the way now it's slack with a normal screwdriver. Keep all these parts in a tub. I normally use a magnetic tray, but to be honest, it's full of stuff and I'm not sure why. I need to have a bit of a sort out. I think it's one of those go-to places just to put something now, so I really need to clean that out, put a few parts away, and then we can see exactly what we're doing. So with that part removed, you can see everything starts to drop down, and I'm going to film all these linkages up here before I go any further. So it's a really simple linkage configuration with these Tecumseh lawnmowers. You can see here there's just one that attaches here, and then you've got these governor arm here. See how they both attach at the top? If you're watching this video, it's because you've taken them off and not taken photographs and you can't remember where they go back. So this spring attaches at the top. There's only two linkages, one spring, and that's it. That's all you need. And what I want to do now is I'm just going to unbolt this carburettor from here. I can actually get to this, which is virtually impossible to get to unless you strip everything down. So I'm just going to undo those two parts, and I'm going to unhook these linkages here, and I'm going to remove this carburettor from this lawnmower. So to help myself a bit here, I've just put that top bolt back in there just to keep everything up, because once these carburetors start to go on an angle, you'll start to get fuel coming out of them. What I need to do now is just get some pliers on here, and this fuel line here, I'm not sure if you can see in there. I need to slide this down the fuel line. I'm going to clamp this fuel line off. So I'll just see if we can grab that. Yeah. As I said, I'm not sure that's the right fuel line anyway. It's all a bit of a mess, is this machine, to be honest. I'll grab hold of that. And I've got to say, while I'm filming this, for all these reasons you're seeing now, this is why I always recommend starting with a Briggs & Stratton 35 Classic engine, because it's so much simpler. You can imagine trying to start with one of these, you'd never get anywhere repairing them for profit. I mean, those Briggs are brilliant. You can take the whole carbon tank off using 2 bolts and 1 linkage, and that's everything off. So that's enough off my soapbox. But you can see my reasoning behind that, can't you? So I'm going to pull this fuel line off now, and I've got a bolt ready here. You can see this bolt, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this into the end of this fuel line once I've got it off. So I'm just going to use a pair of mole grips. I always do this, probably a better way of doing it, and I always say that. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to pull this off here. I'm going to get this bolt here, and I'm going to screw this into the end of here to stop any spillage. You can see, I'll just screw that in, and what I'm going to do next is just take this out as a whole piece. I'm going to put this outside. Even though it's not leaking, I just want it out of the way so I'm not breathing in any fumes. So that's off and out of the way, and I've now got full access, and the only fuel I've got left in this is actually in this carburettor here. In fact, what I could probably do before I go any further, I'm going to have a look at this under here. There's this bolt. I'm going to undo this bolt under here. I'm just going to see if I can drain any old fuel off actually before I take this carburettor off. So I'll kind of do this live. No point me showing you when it's all gone perfectly right, is there? I'll take this top bolt out again here. I've got these big daft gloves on again. As I say, I just get sick of, you know, getting petrol fumes. It's not that it's dirty or anything, it's just it stinks, doesn't it, for days after. I hate that. It really annoys me, but anyway, it's just one of those things. It's really easy to cross thread these on these Tecumsehs. You can see there, got the fuel draining out there. I'm going to let that drain out, because all that's left in here now is actually what's in this carburettor. We'll take all this apart. I'm going to service this carburettor so we can see exactly what's going on. So the next part of this, to get full access to this carburettor again, is to just take off this top plate here. I'm going to take that off, and then I can get to the springs and the linkages. I'm probably going to have to take them off from the back here, because the spring goes right round here. I don't want to alter the spring. I'd rather just unhook the linkage than mess with the spring. Springs are very expensive for lawnmowers. Type in lawnmower spring and look on eBay. The cheapest one that's about, you know, ½ an inch long, it's probably about £4.99 plus postage. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to keep the screws with that plate so I know which ones go back on there. Put that in my tub, and now I can see these linkages here. I'm going to unhook them from this governor arm here. I'm not going to actually unhook them from here just at the minute. Okay, so here goes the fun part. This is the part that when you watch most videos, people just yep, I've got that unhooked now and everything went fine. Well, I'm going to do it while I'm filming it, so you know, you get to experience what you might experience when you come to doing it yourself. So that's off and that's out of the way. I'm going to unhook this linkage from the top here, this top one here. I'm going to pull that back through, take it round if I can. The top one's off. You can see the top one, the hook goes around there. I'm going to take this one off. I've got it all out of the way, and what I want to do now is just hold it up to the camera, make sure that I know where all these linkages go. I'm going to unhook this one here. You can see there, so I know exactly where it went. I've got photographs of it. I'm going to put the linkage in this tub the same way around. I'm going to leave this part connected on here. I'm going to unbolt this carburettor here from this intake. If I grab that, that's going to undo that bolt, which is done nicely. I'll just do the other one, and that's undone as well. So I'm going to take that out. This whole part's going to come away. You can see here how everything's come away, all the linkage and absolutely everything, so I can move all that out of the way, keep it all together as much as possible. And I've now finally, after all that hassle, got this carburetor off and into a position where I can strip it down and actually service it. So this is a pain. This type of lawnmower is a pain to do. That's what I have to do every time when I want to get this actual carburetor off. I've seen people try and take them apart from the bottom and everything, but I mean, it's looking in a bit of a state, and you can see the actual gasket here as well that's sticking out this carb. Someone's obviously just run this into the ground. I'm not sure it's going to make a great sale, but let's have a bit of fun and let's just see what we can do to actually get this running a bit better. But I really don't like the look of this this actual bowl gasket here, so let's have a look at taking that actual bowl off there. If you cross thread these, then that's it, and these are really expensive. I saw someone looking for one of these the other day, just the bowl. I think he paid £30 on eBay for a bowl. I think you can buy the carb for about 20 quid. Anyway, I didn't really have the heart to tell him once he'd bought it, so let me just grab a spanner off here. Take a while, I guess. That was a stroke of luck. I'm going to undo that really carefully and take that off. Let's have a look at everything that's coming off here. This looks like it's just been made up with all sorts of old bits. Let's take that off. There's a bit of fuel left in there. There's not a lot left. That's why I like to dump as much out as I can and clamp the fuel line off. Just saves getting in a real mess with this. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to remove this retaining pin, but I want to show you something in here that's kind of a little bit unique for these Tecumseh carburetors compared to the Honda ones anyway. If you look inside here where this main jet is here, you'll actually see there's like a rubber o-ring around this emulsion tube here. This is actually got to be perfect, and if you push these out from the top, if you actually push it down from the top, there's sometimes one at the top and sometimes there isn't one at the top. But if you actually ruin this o-ring, you'll have all sorts of problems, so you've got to be really careful taking these apart. So to do this, just push this retaining pin out here. See this little pin? You can actually just pull this retaining pin out here like this. Do it with your fingers, but if you can't get your fingers on it, just pull this pin out and just wiggle this out like that. Drop it in the tub. What you want to look for before you take everything apart now is actually how this needle is sat in here. You want to know if there's a spring in here or anything, because sometimes you can take this apart and wonder if there should have been a spring in it. So I'm going to take this out now, and I think this just, if I remember rightly, this just sits together. It actually hooks together like that and then just drops out, and that's correct. This needle should just drop out, which it has done like that. So that comes out. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some carb spray and I'm going to spray every single area I can find on this. I'm going to attempt to remove this main jet here as well. You can see here, this bolt here is a strange setup. You've got to make sure everything in these is really clear. Blow everything out with a compressor or a can of air duster, or compressed air. If you can't get hold of a compressor, make sure everything's clean and tidy. Every little hole, including all these tiny little ones down here, and even if you open this up on the back here, there's actually even some tiny ones in the back of here as well. You want to make sure everything's really clean and tidy and there's no blockages whatsoever. So I'm going to attempt to take this tube out here, this emulsion tube, just push it down. Just get yourself an Allen key. There's no screw on the bottom of these Tecumseh ones. You just take an Allen key and just really carefully poke this down from the top. There is actually a specific Tecumseh carburetor tool that you can use for actually getting this tube out. If you just work your way down the Allen key sizes like I've done here, eventually you can push this down to the bottom to a point where, being really careful not to damage this ring here, you can actually hook this out. You'll eventually just be able to wiggle this out, just being real careful. You see there, see that little tube here, that little o-ring? You want to be very careful with that part there and drop that in there. And hopefully I'll just be able to tap or wriggle this tube out, but I'm just taking my time with this just to make sure I don't damage anything, because often there is another ring at the top, like a little o-ring at the top of these carburetors as well. And you just got to be real patient with this and just do everything you can not to damage anything while you're taking it out. You can see there, I've eventually got that out. I'm not rushing about, I just want to see what comes out of here with that. And there isn't another one attached to this part, but I'm not sure if you can see right down this hole here, there is actually another one that sits there that doesn't always come out. You can probably just about see it there, and that's sat nice and level. So I'm glad that stayed in, that saves me a little job there. So I'm going to take anything I can off this carburetor now. I'm going to blow this whole thing through with carb spray, and I'm going to clean it all off with the air compressor as well. fact, I've got some new carb spray here. I bought some the other day. I've always used this. I always use this stuff, this STP carb spray. So I'm going to give that a shake, and I'm going to go kind of in everywhere I can get. And just give this a really good clean out. You're going to get in everywhere you can possibly find. If there's any screws that come out of a carburetor on anything you do in the future, make sure you take them out and blow through everything. Make sure absolutely everything's clean, including this one here. Do you remember when I showed you this screw had to be in for this to prime? Make sure you get in all these little areas as well, because you just never know what you might be missing if you don't. When you've done the carburetor as well, you want to make sure that these main jets are really clean. You see these tiny little holes here? If any of those are blocked, this isn't going to run properly. So make sure everything's clean and tidy. Once you've got it all cleaned out with carb spray, put it in a separate place. Just keep it somewhere that's reasonably clean and tidy, don't have any dirt on or anything like that. I know my bench is fairly clean, so make sure you do every single part. It's really important that you get in absolutely everywhere. Make sure everything's totally clean, because there's a lot of these little parts here actually have like a little hole, and you can see just in there. You don't want any of these to have any blockages at all. See, I've got that on the side. See how it actually, you block it off at the end, it actually comes out these little holes here. You can be sure that everything's nice and clean and unobstructed, which is exactly what you want. So now I've got that done, I'm just going to take the air compressor. I'm going to try and turn this down a bit in editing because it's always really loud, but I'm just going to blow through all this. I'm going to be a bit careful in here not to remove this little O-ring in here. I'm going to blow through all these parts and make sure everything's dried off and really clean and tidy. So now I've got everything cleaned off and blown out, I'm going to do the little part that you can easily lose here, this actual needle here. You can just hook that back on there. You see how it just hooks back over there. Make sure everything's really lined up. This might take a few goes. It's a really fiddly little carburetor to do. Just try and line everything up, and it helps if you tip it backwards. You actually tip that backwards like that, you can actually have a chance of keeping this on this float while you push this over the top. And down here, what I want to do next is just find the retaining pin, which I've got here. Just push everything back through. Like you can see there, just get everything back through. And that takes a few goes sometimes. What you want to make sure, once you've got this retaining pin in the middle as well, is you want to make sure is this actual needle, you can actually see it moving up and down. Not sure if you can see in there. It's not really easy to focus in here, but you can see the needle's just moving up and down a little bit, just at the bottom here, just under this float. You can see there, just below my finger there. You can actually see this actual needle's moving up and down. This mustn't be sticking, because if it does, when it fills up with fuel, it won't shut this needle off here when this float actually rises up, and it won't shut off the fuel, and you'll have a carburetor that floods. So that's all back together. I'm going to put all these other little bits back together as well. This is all clean and tidy, and I'm happy that I've done as good a job on that as I could do. I'm just looking at this float bowl gasket. It's not really very good. It wasn't leaking before, really. I should replace that. But what I'm going to do is just try and pop it on for now and see if we can stop any leaks. But that really does want replacing. Wanting the best of all, when I took that off, I did point it out. So before I do that, I'm going to put this main jet back inside this carburetor. So I'm just going to fit this O-ring on the bottom of here as it was before. Make sure that's on. And I'm going to poke this in the bottom of this carburetor, just as you can see there. I'm just going to drop that in. See if we can get that started off. And the easiest way to push that back up there in the correct position is kind of with the back end of a drill bit, a nice flat edge, and you can push this back up where it wants to go, and everything stays in position. Now the trick to this part is actually getting this, I've actually got a drill bit here, the trick of this is actually getting this to push back into this carburetor all in one piece without this actual O-ring coming off. So if I take that there and just push it, what I'm trying to do is keep absolutely everything together. I can see that's just gone in there, but I can actually see that the O-ring's not quite on right, so I'm going to have to take that out, and I'm going to have a few goes at this, because it's really important that you get this back together actually you know, totally perfectly. You can't just leave this. You can't just think, oh, I'll put it in without it. You just won't run right. So I'm going to pop that back out again. And it's just a case of trial and error really. And I'm going to make sure that this is seated correctly and this actual main jet's back in here with this O-ring all neatly fitted. So I'm going to have to do exactly what I did before at the beginning. Just unhook this out again and just keep fiddling about until I can push this whole thing back in. In fact, as I can see, I've got that O-ring back on there neatly. Somehow it's got itself back into position there, so let's give this another go. So this is take two. I've actually got the O-ring back on here and I've got a slightly bigger drill bit. And that's it, that's just pushed in and the O-ring's gone in as well, so I'm happy with that. Eventually I got there. It's just a little bit of a trial and error with that just to get everything back together properly. Hopefully now you can just about see what I mean about that little black O-ring sitting around the edge of this main jet. You must get that in right or this Tecumseh carburetor won't work properly. So I've just taken a minute to get that gasket as evenly lined up in there as I can. It's actually sat a lot better in this actual bowl than it was before, so just make sure I've got everything back together, make sure that retaining pin's in the right position and this needle's still moving about nicely. I'm going to put that back on there, try and get everything nice and evenly lined up in one go. It's just moved about a bit, so this is just going to take me a few minutes. I want to make sure that this is really seated well, it's nice and tight. I'm not going to have any leaks when I put this back together. So I've just taken 5 minutes just to fit this actual washer on this bowl properly. I found the best way to do it was actually to put it back in the bowl and then tip the whole thing upside down, making sure this retaining pin stayed in the correct position. Line it up really evenly all the way around without trying to push it on yourself. Then what I did is I pushed this bolt back in and I actually let the bolt actually push the washer back together and actually seal this whole unit, because it's virtually impossible to try and kind of manipulate this on until you put the bolt in. So if you're struggling and the washer's come off, just put it on first, drop it on this actual part inside the bowl, and then just drop the whole thing together and tighten this up. So I'm just going to nip that up, and at this stage I've got this carburetor now nicely cleaned out and nicely serviced. So I've got this all cleaned off. What I need to do next is I want to test this doesn't actually leak before putting it back on this mower, because you probably remember just how long it's taken me to get all those parts off. Well, if I was to put this back on and then find out that it leaks, then I would have to take all those parts back off again and then actually sort out the problem. So one thing to mention as well is that earlier on I must have knocked this spring off here. See this little spring here, and this actual other side of it that links under here, it actually goes in this little slot here. I'd actually moved that and I couldn't understand why this didn't spring back properly. So the end of this spring had come round here, so I was kind of messing about with this. I actually caught it on the microfiber cloth I had on the bench in there with all the carb parts on. So anyone who's lost that little spring there or moved it, I've just hooked it in there, and the other part of it just hooks under here, this little cut out under here. Everything springs back then. It was working before, but it was really quite lazy. It didn't spring back like that. And once again, I didn't want to put all this back together and find out it didn't work. So while the sun's out a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean this up a bit. I'm going to test this actual carb don't leak. I'm going to spray this up with some cleaner and blow all this off with a compressor. And I want to take this head off here as well. Just looking in here last night, and this head gasket looks like it's from, you know, the 1800s or something. So I'm going to undo the head. But the problem I've got at the minute is I've looked on a few sites for a head gasket. I'm not exactly sure what type of Tecumseh engine this is. I can only presume it's a Vantage. All the ones with a 35 on the top seem to be Vantage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean it up first and just see if I can find any markings on it that says actually exactly which type it is. And I'm going to actually just take this head off here. We'll have a look at these valves in here. They're not adjustable on these. These aren't overhead valve lawnmowers, they're just flathead engines. So without any specialist tools, it's really awkward to set these valves unless you want to start grinding stuff down, which no one really likes to do. So I'm going to test this carb, make sure it doesn't leak by connecting it back to the petrol tank. But first of all, I'm just going to spray this up with some stuff and let it start to work, and then I can blow this off with a compressor. So I've just sprayed that up a bit there. We'll just leave that. But one of the main reasons for buying this little impact drill here as well was just to see if I can undo these sort of bolts like this. It's just lawnmower's running away from me. It's actually undone it already, that. Look at that there. Just saves such a lot of time. see, I can actually get in here, do these little jobs so much quicker than I could do before. This would have taken me, you know, a good 5 minutes with a normal socket, which isn't a problem, but I quite like reinvesting some of my profits back in. Normally buy myself 1 or 2 things a year really, just to help speed this process up. So if you look at that, I've got all those undone now. I can pull all these out and keep them in order. I'm going to set this head off this lawnmower as well. They're all really loose, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted, so that's got plenty of power for all the jobs I'm going to need. I'm going to pull this head off here. I'm going to look at this gasket, so I don't want to put it all back together. I think it's only about £3 for a head gasket, so I'm going to take all that off and then clean it all off and put another head gasket on, but I need to know exactly which one it is. So the only way to do it was to undo all this lot. I've just unbolted it all apart from this one here. Turn the camera back on. You can see here the back of the head. You see this gasket here, some of it's kind of missing, some of it isn't really bad I suppose, but it's not really worth not replacing it. Let's take a look at that. Let's just take that off. What I need to do is just clean all this off and order replacement parts. I've said they're only really cheap to get hold of. I can decarbonise this head. I can just take something and make sure all this piston's really tidy as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to turn this flywheel here at the top, and I'm going to make sure these valves open and close properly and nothing's actually sticking. Yeah, and everything looks to be moving fine there, so I'm happy with that. So what I've done here is I've just connected this carburetor back up. I know there's some petrol in this tank, and what I'm really looking for here is making sure there's absolutely nothing leaking out of here. You can see around here there's nothing actually leaking out the bottom as long as this carburetor's level. What you don't want to see is loads of drips kind of piling out the back or out of anywhere really, but particularly it'd be out the back or out the bottom here. I don't see any links at all in that, which is great. That means I've got that gasket back on okay and nothing's leaking out. So as I said, I'll just repeat this just for anyone who missed this. Don't put this back together until you've done that, because it's, you know, it's a good 20 minutes, half an hour job to strip it all back down just to get it off and make sure the needle's sat right or you've got a gasket on right. So make sure you test this before you put it back on, particularly on this Tecumseh Lawnmower. What would be really helpful on one of these is having a fuel tap, which is one of those things you get on the Honda lawnmowers, which I really like. So I've just cleaned this head off a bit. You can see here, just clean this off, just bring around all this and taking this old gasket off with a bit of wire wool. I've done the same here on this actual head here. You can see all these bits that have come off. I'll just clean around the edge of that. There's a little bit of work to do on that just to make sure it's all really flat, clean and tidy. I'm going to order a gasket for that. I'm going to put a head gasket on, I think for the sake of the £3 I'm going to do that as well. I say I'm probably not going to make much profit with this lawnmower, but I thought it was really worthwhile just filming this video to help anybody out who has one of these Tecumseh, so I'm kind of doing it for that now really. It's never going to make me much profit in this one, but if you're just getting started doing this and you do it 2 or 3 times, the experience you'll get is just like invaluable. You know, you can just learn how to do these things, and in about a 20 minutes time when you get another one, you'll know exactly what tools you need, how to get everything off and the order, everything to look for and how to put everything back on. So it's really worth investing a little bit of time just playing around with these things, even if you're not making any profit right at the beginning. So I've just taken this carburetor off this lawnmower again. What I did notice is when I put it on the lawnmower, although it didn't leak, it didn't prime either. I wanted to check it primed and it didn't prime, and I think it was because of this gasket. You can see here, just as a temporary measure, I've just ordered one of these. I've just put a big O-ring around this and I've not tried it yet, so what I want to do is just connect it up to this petrol tank here and let the actual fuel flow into it here, just flow down into this carburetor, and then I'm going to try it and see if it primes again, because I need to make absolutely sure that it doesn't leak and also that it does prime before I rebuild this Tecumseh engine. I've connected this up now. What I'm looking at in here, you can actually alter this. This is like an adjustment for how much the fuel flows and how you want your engine to run eventually. But if you look inside there, hopefully with the sun, you can see that this is actually priming. So let me turn it around this way, hopefully you can see a little bit better. You can see how the fuel's pushing up through there. There's a lot of it flowing out of there. There's probably too much actually, but it is actually priming. So I've got a chance of starting this lawnmower when it's rebuilt. Looks like there's quite a lot coming out of there. As I say, I have ordered this gasket, so that should be here shortly, just a couple of days. But for now, I might just bolt this back on. I just want to see if this actually runs now I've cleaned this carb out, and it doesn't actually stop. So I've just started rebuilding this now. It's very fiddly to do, is this. What you must do is you must get all these linkages actually linked up here to this governor arm first and connect them to this carburetor. This little tab here, by the way, that bends backwards towards that direction, if you like, towards the back of the mower. You must make sure everything moves freely as well, like this does here. And then what you've got to do is you've got to bolt this carburetor to this part. Now of course you don't need to put this part on first. The easiest way to do this is to hook all these linkages up here and actually connect these two parts up separately and then re-bolt this one back onto the engine. But it's really time consuming. It's taken me a good 10 minutes to do that with a little bit of trial and error. So make sure everything moves exactly as it should. And I just want to show you this little spring here. See this little tiny spring that sits on the top of here? Actually hooks there. You must make sure that this tiny little spring here actually hooks under this little insert here, and this actually does its job. When the carburetor is off the machine, you must make sure this actually opens and closes, which it does. I've just refitted this plate here, and the next job I've got is just to put this air filter box back on. If you remember, it just went on the back of here. It actually bolts through the back of there, off the actual back of the carburetor, and sits in here just like that. And then the recoil cover just fits back on top, and then after I've got the recoil cover on, of course I can actually fit this petrol tank, which, if I remind you there, just slides back on the back of this recoil cover. Of course, nearly forgot, don't want to forget this exhaust as well, so just tighten that back up. Once you get this air filter box in place, these are a pain, by the way. You can get a little small one that just pushes on the back of this carb. You can actually look in it and see if it's priming. These are a bit of a pain. These are like coffin style air filters. If you drop that there, you can actually see you must remember to connect this up at the back before you tighten everything up. So I'm just going to push that back in there in a minute. I'm going to tighten these two screws up, one here and one on the back. So that's all back together now. I hope this illustrates pretty well why I absolutely made sure that this carburetor wasn't leaking and was priming before I put it back together, because it's just so time consuming on here. So I'm going to put this recoil cover on. I've actually ordered a second-hand recoil off eBay for this. I'm going to drop this recoil back on, and then I can hang this petrol tank back in here. Wait for this recoil to come, and I'm just waiting in the post as well for this gasket to come for this head gasket as well. So just putting this back together, you must make sure that this recoil cover just fits around here. This just pushes under, and that provides air into the actual engine there through this air filter box. And I've just bolted these back on here at the back, and what I want to show now is just this petrol tank. It just pushes back on. If you just get it there and then drop it down, this just pushes back on from the top like that, and that's on. And that's the whole side of this back together. I've just got this air filter put back on this cover, but I've got a carburetor, I know it's clean and serviced, I know it's not leaking, and I know it primes, so I can't put the exhaust guard back on just yet because I'm waiting for this head gasket, as I've said. So for now, I'm just going to tidy up a little bit. When I get these parts, I'll come back and I'll put these on. This gasket has just arrived here, and this head gasket and this ball gasket as well, so let's just go in here and let's just drag this mower out. I want to see if this gasket fits. It looks a bit small, but I'm sure it'll be right. But let's just drag this mower out of here. Let's see if we can bolt this head gasket back on, and let's try and fire this mower up. I fitted the recoil, by the way. Unfortunately my battery on my camera ran out, so I didn't have a chance to film it. You just put the bolts through here basically, that's all you do. Just bolt it back on, but that's all done. That was £12 off eBay, that second hand, but it doesn't really look like it's ever been used. So anyway, let's get this out and let's put this head gasket on. So looks like I've ordered the right part anyway, and see how well this lines up. But to do this next, I'm just going to take this recoil cover off again. There's only a couple of bolts. I'll drop this petrol tank off. That'll only take me a minute, and then we'll refit this gasket. So I've got everything lined up. I've just put a couple of bolts in here. You can see this new gasket is just sat on there. I'm just going to push this on. I'm going to lightly put all these bolts back in. They're all the same length, and then I'm going to tighten these up with this new impact tool I've got, and that should only take me a second, and hopefully we'll get to try this in a minute. But you can see, as I've mentioned a few times, it takes quite a long time to take everything off these mowers and test them, so you've kind of got to get it right first time really before you rebuild everything and test it. So I'm going to put these bolts back in, as I've said, and we'll test this lawnmower. So that took me no time at all using this little Ryobi 1 Plus. And see, just tighten this up. What I like to do is just make sure everything looks like it's set nice and neat. Nothing slipped out of position, all the bolts have gone through everywhere, and I'm happy with that. So let's pull this recoil cover back on, let's try this mower. Right, so this is the fun bit, this is the bit where you join me and we'll see if this runs. I've just put another spark plug in here, a new one in, and I've put this recoil cover on. I've got everything back together. There's actually a bolt missing from the front there. I put one in, it's not quite right, but I want to try this, and I do this a lot on my videos now, is I do this live, and I'm going to see if this actually runs. I'll just grab this tripod, because I really don't want to rebuild this again. It's already cost me £15 to buy it and £15 for parts of this one, so anything could happen, and I might just have to set under the bottom of the carburetor. There's actually an adjustment screw I might have to set, but let's see if we can get this running first. I'm going to prime this a few times, let's see if we get anything at all. I have put a new spark plug in it as well, so let's so there's nothing there, no sign of life at all. Let's just give it a few more goes, and I really want this to work. I really don't have to redo this. Not a good start, no signs of life whatsoever. Make sure this spark plug is on right now. This isn't good. So, I've got no leaks anyway, and I know it primes. I just wonder if it hasn't got any fuel through to it yet. I don't know if there's a real lot in there, to be honest. Just about enough. So yeah, not good. It's not what I wanted. So let's have a look around and see what we can do to sort this. And you've got no signs of life at all like that. It's normally this lawnmower's not getting spark, so I'm just wondering. I've just put some more fuel in there just to make sure there's enough in. I'm just wondering if I've over-tightened the spark plug, if there's no gap. I'm not exactly sure that I'm getting spark yet, so I'm going to have to test that. This sometimes if you tighten these in too far, you can actually bend this here and you won't actually get spark jumping across. So I wonder if I've just knocked something on the ignition coil. It does seem like there's no signs of life whatsoever, and that's usually just it not sparking properly. So also take a look in here as well. If this is ever bent on the end of here and it's not connected right, that won't start. So these are the things I do. I'd normally put a bit more fuel in it to make sure it's not that, and I would put another plug in and make sure it's not bent. Also, this adjustment screw on the bottom of this carburetor, I've backed that out a bit as well. So let's see what we get now we've tried those things. So I'm still having trouble with this mower. I've tried, it's definitely got sparks. I've tested the spark, and it's definitely getting fuel through to it as well. And I know it did start before, but one thing I wanted to do, just while I've got everything stripped down, is I wanted to see if this little Ryobi 1 impact was strong enough to take this actual top bolt off, because I want to check the keyway on this. So I'm going to try it now. So I'm going to hold my camera there. Let's see if it can do the job. Oh yeah, no problems. That's really handy. That saves me getting my electric one out. Let's have a look at this here. I just want to check this keyway. Yeah, you see this keyway in here. I've never seen one like that before. That looks badly smashed. You see the badly smashed are a different design to the Briggs ones. I'm guessing that's badly smashed. Can you see there? That should all line up. It shouldn't be over this side. It should all be lined up there. So I'm going to take this flywheel off, and I'm going to put another key in here. So this video is really turning out to be a bit of an in-depth one, isn't it? So I'm going to take this flywheel off now with a flywheel puller, and I'm going to actually just check this keyway and put another key in there, because if the timing's out it'll spark at the wrong time. And it did start and run for a bit, this mower, but then it did die as well. So let's see what we get when we take this flywheel off. It's quite big as well. I'm not sure if this flywheel's either supposed to have this key in or if it's supposed to have a normal keyway. Either way, I think it's probably right, if I'm honest with you, because I've never seen one as smashed as that before. And that slides in there. So I'm just going to get a normal keyway. Everyone watching this who does this a lot will be thinking, oh, just put it in the comments. I've seen these loads of times, but these Tecumseh ones I've never really taken apart this much before. I didn't realise if it had a different keyway on or not. So I'm not sure if that's been smashed. It looks more smashed to me than anything. I'm going to go get another key. Let's try it and see if it fits. So yeah, I've not seen that before. This is the correct keyway for these Tecumseh lawnmowers. All I did really was, if I'm honest, I just looked on eBay, typed Tecumseh keyway and see what they look like. But that's it's either a long time since I've seen that, or I've not seen it at all, if I'm honest with you. So it is right, and everything's as it should be. So I'm going to slide that back in there before I lose it. You can see how it all lines up there. So I'm happy that that's okay. I'm going to put the flywheel back on. While I'm here, this is the kill switch as well for these Tecumseh. So if you've got a lawnmower with no spark, and you're blaming the ignition coil from here to here, there's a good chance it could be this wire that has a break in it, although on this Tecumseh one it's quite a good thick wire is that, so you might just want to check these connections as well. So I'm going to drop the flywheel back on now, and I'll give this another go. So just before I put that on, I just want to show you how this kill switch works on this Tecumseh lawnmower. You see, when you operate the safety lever here, it's actually like a little wire. It actually pushes the wire. You see the wire right in the middle there? It actually pushes that away, and that actually activates this so you can get spark down to the plug. If that doesn't work right, you won't get any spark down to this spark plug. And I know mine's working alright because I've already tested it for spark. Right, so I've refitted this flywheel here. Just a note on that, I've had to tie the handle up because the brake actually works from the inside to the outside on this flywheel. Make sure you get the keyway back in the right way and this flywheel will all drop on. But what I've done is I've put the head back on. What I want to do is I want to make sure that this head's not on too tight, and actually that these valves are still moving inside, because if it's the slightly wrong gasket it doesn't actually fasten up. If it's actually too tight, I could actually stop these valves from moving. So what I've done is I've taken this little, what I like to call a trap door off. You can see in there. What I want to do is I'm just going to turn this flywheel here. You can see here the valves. I want to make sure that they're both moving and everything's working as it should. So you can see there, if I'm rotating it, that they're pushing out and everything's working as it should. Because sometimes you do get this, you do get it where the valves won't move properly. I can see everything's moving properly there. So I'm happy that the head's on right. I'm happy that it's all tightened up evenly and it's not stopping these valves from moving. I know I've got fuel because I've primed it and I've watched it all basically pour out of here, and I know I've got spark, so I'm not 100% sure just at the minute why this lawnmower won't run. So let's put the recoil cover back on and let's try it again. Basically just put everything back. There's nothing should have changed really, but sometimes you just don't know. Maybe I flooded it or something, I'm not sure. Let's hope it starts, or at least shows some sign of life. Nothing there. Let's give it a bit of fuel. So no, still nothing. This is a strange going on. So I'm just going to do a few daft things. I've just taken the exhaust off this, which might sound stupid, but I've done this before on one of these and it actually helps it fire up, and I don't know why. I've just taken the exhaust off. I'm just going to try and start this up. It'll be loud if it does anything, but I just want to see if it fires. I just want it to fire a little bit. And there's a bit. Right, so that's really loud of course, but at least I know it does fire up, so I'm not sure why it doesn't with the exhaust on. Let's try it again with the exhaust on. This is the reason, if you look on the website, Repair Lawnmowers for Profit, this is why I always recommend starting with a Briggs engine, because this has been nothing but a real pain. You see there's nothing there with the exhaust on, that's really strange. Well, I have to say that this has been a pig. There's a little bit of fuel dripping out of the... You do get this stuff on Tecumseh. It's very strange. It does happen a lot actually on these carbs. There's nothing leaking, but I'm going to swap that actual gasket over to take this ball off. I'm going to swap that over. But what I was adjusting there, when I eventually got it running here, was this screw under here. This actually sets the speed. So you're going to want to set that. And I just backed that out a couple of turns, just kind of as a standard setting. I turn it all the way in, then backed it off a couple of turns. I think you're supposed to back it off 1.5 or 2 turns. But eventually I've got this lawnmower running, so what I need to do now is just let it cool down a few times, and try and start it up from cold and make sure it starts up okay from cold. But finally, I've eventually got this lawnmower serviced, and it's been an absolute pain, I have to say. So if you're looking to start repairing lawnmowers for profit, I'll give you a huge bit of advice. Do not start with the Tecumseh. Right, I'm going for a cup of tea. So I can't lie, this Tecumseh has been a real pain to get sorted out, but eventually I've got there. I don't like to get beat, and I've eventually got this thing running perfect. It's starting up nicely as well now. I've changed the oil, sharpened the blade and done all that stuff as well off camera, so it's all done and ready to go. There's not going to be any profit in this, I wouldn't have thought, for me, so I've spent like £15 buying it, £15 on parts. But I wanted to get to the end of this video and just show you that you can do this, and if you did this sort of 4 or 5 times, you'd have one of these stripped down and serviced probably in about an hour, just less than an hour I would have thought. But not the ideal lawnmower to start on. But if you've got to the end of this video and you've watched it all, then well done, because it's obviously been a long one. If I've helped you by teaching you how to service these sort of lawnmowers up, if you do me a massive favour and just visit my new website, which is repairlawnmowersforprofit.com. There's a link in the description to an actual article I've just written all on these Tecumseh engines, so all the specifications will be on there for everything you'll need. So if you haven't subscribed already, please be sure to do so. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again next time.